Thank you all very much. First of all, to the HMTC and everything it does in the way of education, because that's what it's all about. I'm going to tell you very quickly my story because I think it's worth a couple of words. I was born in 1939. My father was German, came to Amsterdam, the Netherlands, at the age of 18 because there was no future for him as a Jewish person in Germany. My mother was Dutch, came from a very well-to-do family, and was fully assimilated in Dutch society. The Netherlands, Holland we call it, had approximately 9 million people in 1939, 1940. Of those 9 million people, approximately 145,000 were Jews. Of those 145,000, approximately 85,000 lived in Amsterdam. Of those 85,000, approximately 25,000 were in the diamond business. My mother's family was in the diamond business. Hitler had promised as late as 1939 that he would not attack the Netherlands because Holland had been neutral during World War I, and it was expected that if he opened a front on the western side of Europe, that the Netherlands would be exempted. Notwithstanding that, on May 10th, 1940, Hitler attacked the city of Rotterdam, destroyed most of it, and threatened to take over Holland within 2 days. The Dutch royal family immediately left. Some of my relatives were able to leave. My mother's sister and her family were able to ultimately wind up in Port Washington. My mother's sister was a founder of the community synagogue in Port Washington and was the head of Hadassah at the synagogue. A cousin and my mother's sister's husband founded the Nassau stores. Nassau, you should know, is named after the Dutch royal family, which is the House of Orange-Nassau. So our Nassau stores were created with that name and were in Port Washington and Manhasset. The one in Manhasset is now Reindew, and it has survived, but all the other Nassau stores had disappeared. We had more stores in 1970 than a man named Walton, who created a small company called Walmart. If those four owners could have gotten along, there's no knowing what would have happened to us. At any rate, at age 3, or not yet age 3, my father was called up the same day as Margot Frank to be deported to Germany to a work camp. And he went to the local railroad station. He saw that Jews were being pushed into cattle cars with the gates locked. And it wasn't just young, healthy people. It was old and little kids, invalids being pushed into these cattle cars and the gates locked. And my mother's sister, or one of her sisters at that time, was also caught with her children and taken to a concentration camp ultimately. In the meantime, we went to a port, thought that we could take a boat to England, as did my mother's sister and her family, and we saw utter chaos. There was no chance to get on a boat. We went back to our apartment, and within a couple of days, the borders were sealed, and we could not get out. I wound up shortly thereafter, through the Dutch resistance, with a policeman and his wife who accepted me. I was not yet 3 years old. They accepted me as a Jewish child that they would take care of, not knowing my name, not knowing where I came from, knowing that if the Nazis found that they were hiding a Jewish kid, they would be killed. Notwithstanding that, they were religious people, and they always said it was the right thing to do. With them, I survived the war, and my parents, in the meantime, also through the resistance, found a hiding place in an attic in Amsterdam on a main street. They were in that attic with one window, no heat or light, no electricity, for nearly 2.5 years, 24 hours a day. I always think how hard it is to be with my spouse in a canoe for more than an hour. Think of what they must have done. And also think of the decision to give up your less than 3-year-old child as the only way to save yourself and to save the child. It's the decision they made. It ultimately saved my life. Needless to say, the war ended. My parents came through the resistance. They learned where I was in hiding. They came to pick me up. I didn't know them. It had been 2.5 years. I was so young when it started. I was now almost 6, and I didn't know them. Anyway, through a period, everything went fine. We came to America. We landed in Port Washington. I met my wife in 7th grade. We have been married 63 years. Uh, I don't know if it quite fits the story here, but her family came over on the Mayflower. At any rate, the story ends well. We have a lovely family, and we owe everything to the United States. We love this country. When we came, and we first saw the Statue of Liberty, we were on the top deck of a boat, and my mother said this was in November of 1947. My mother said the words that I will always remember. The tears were streaming down her face, and she said, "We beat Hitler." And that's our story. Thank you.